noticing or finding from sort of the foot soldiers up to the leadership level? What was making people vulnerable to join something like Boko Haram at the time?
What makes someone vulnerable to an extremist group? And what does it take to bring them back? In today's episode, we're joined by Dr Fatima Akilu, who is a renowned psychologist, author, and the executive director of Neem Foundation. She led Nigeria's first counter-violent extremism program under the National Security Advisor's Office. She then continued to build the Neem Foundation, which provides vital psychosocial support for victims of the Boko Haram regime in northern Nigeria.
I always felt that the Boko Haram insurgency was actually an opportunity to remake our society because it came with so many other things that we could do.
We find out in this episode what it really takes to heal a community from the inside out. This episode's out now. Listen and watch wherever you get your podcasts. And let us know your thoughts.
Hi everyone. Welcome to today's episode of The Culture Gap, where we explore different topics related to mental health and culture. I've got a very special guest with me today. We've got Dr Fatima Akilu, and it's going to be really hard for me to introduce Dr Fatima because she's done so many amazing things. But to summarize, Dr Fatima is a psychologist, author, former director of the Behavioral Analysis and Strategic Communication at the Office of the National Security Advisor in Nigeria, where she helped to develop the country's first countering violent extremism program. And she's currently the executive director of the Neem Foundation. So without any further ado, hi, Dr. Fatima.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
No problem. Welcome to our podcast. And thank you so much for joining. I know you've taken time out of your busy schedule just for us. So I do really appreciate that. To start off with, I thought we could talk a little bit about the Neem Foundation. And if you could talk us through the story of how it started and what sort of moved you to be involved in Neem.
I think I would say that really at the heart of Neem is psychology or mental health. And the reason I say that is because we did a lot of work on counter-violent extremism, preventive violent extremism when I was working for government. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we always wanted to do was introduce mental health into the work.
Right.
We were in government for 3 years, and unfortunately, we left in 2015. So we were not able to do the work in mental health that I felt was so central in recovering from conflict.
Okay.
So when we started Neem, I thought, wow, this is an amazing opportunity. I started Neem with my sister, who's a lawyer, but she's also has a background in education. So we thought the combination of mental health, education, rehabilitation, reintegration was a gap that we could address.
So mental health professional and a lawyer started together, something that sounds amazing. But you mentioned that you were in government for 3 years. So what was that initial period like? What work were you doing during that time?
I was invited to join government in 2012 because at the time we had the Boko Haram insurgency was really, really at its height in some ways. And the government had been addressing it through kinetic efforts. And the then National Security Advisor decided that we needed to have a non-kinetic, more civilian approach to addressing the insurgency. So I was invited to come in and draft a program.
Right.
And so the program really was to do 3 things: to engage people who had joined Boko Haram at different levels. So including the founders at the leadership level, at the intermediate level, and at the foot soldier level. And to design a program that could engage them, rehabilitate them, and eventually reintegrate them back into society. The second thing that they were really concerned about was how do you stem, as a society, the numbers of people that join these kinds of radical groups. So we looked at it from multiple perspectives, whether it was ideology, whether it was education, looking at how people are taught in schools, critical thinking. We looked at it from a more societal community level, looked at it from religious instruction, religious leadership, teaching. And we also looked at it from a messaging perspective, strategic communication. So the program that we designed really attempted to do so many things in a kind of all government, all society. So we were able to bring multiple departments and agencies of government at the federal, state and local level to address how we think of society in some ways, actually was what we tried to do.
And what were you noticing or finding from sort of the foot soldiers up to the leadership level? What was making people vulnerable to join something like Boko Haram at the time?
Honestly, I think there were so many things, but crux of it at that time was this idea of wanting to matter, to be part of something. And for Boko Haram, in those early days, it was a brotherhood. So a lot of these people felt a bit alienated, sometimes from family, sometimes from community, sometimes misunderstood. And there were others who also wanted to join because it offered them a sense and opportunity for livelihoods. And so it was very different. When we first started working in counter-terrorism related activities, most of the people that joined were men. But towards the end, we started to see women who joined, and the women who joined at the time joined for very different reasons, because a lot of them, they saw the leaders of Boko Haram, who seemed very, very appealing. They had a lot of command. They had a lot of resources. So for them, it was a step up. There was status. So a lot of the women that joined voluntarily ended up marrying people who had positions within the movement.
So you say power.
And so their life improved in some ways. And but on the flip side, we also saw a lot of women who were kidnapped into the movement, who played critical roles for the movement, but really detrimental to them. So cooking, cleaning, some were kept as slaves. Sexual slavery was a big part of how the group operated. And of course, Boko Haram had a huge squad of female suicide bombers. So they used as fodder and sacrificed, really.
I remember there was an incident in Abuja, the UN office, wasn't there, related to, I think there was something related to a suicide bombing there back in the day. So I remember that appearing on the news. And I think in the West, a lot of the media focused on more of the very extreme violence that was coming out, but actually we didn't hear about the years that led up to it. Of building that ideology behind why people would want to do that.
Absolutely. And they were really strategic and really clever. And one thing I learned from working with them is that they're very patient. And you could call them in some ways people with some level of psychological understanding, even if they haven't studied it formally, because they knew how to persuade on multiple levels. They knew how to emotionally connect with people. And they did many things. They also gave them a sense of worth, a sense of an education. A lot of the people who were co-opted, coerced, kidnapped, and some who joined voluntary really had no education. So everything that they learned, even though a lot of it was the teaching of Islam through the eyes of Boko Haram, through their interpretation. But when they come out, they said, well, before we went into movement, we knew nothing. Now at least we know something. So it really just shows you that as a society, you must engage your citizens.
Absolutely,
one way or the other, or they will find alternatives.
And it makes sense then why Neem worked, because you had to go via a community-based rehabilitation route to offer something that is of more value than what Boko Haram was offering.
Absolutely. Well, we were really lucky when we started Neem because we had the experience at the government level, and also because we were the ones who designed and implemented the very first de-radicalisation program that we ever had in the country. We spent so much time talking to the leadership of Boko Haram. So we had a really good understanding of the psychology behind the movement, the persuasive skills they used, why people joined the movement, why people stayed within the movement, and what was being offered that was so seductive. So I think a lot of the homework had been done for us. So we didn't really start Neem from scratch at all. And we were also lucky that when my sister and I, Hurera, left the NSA office, our whole team left and joined Neem.
Amazing.
So, I think we hit the ground running because we could. Yeah.
And if you don't mind me asking, what was the reason behind you leaving the office?
It's an interesting story. In 2015, we had an election in Nigeria. So a different party won. So I was invited to join government during the administration of Dr. Goodluck Jonathan. So when he lost the election, the new party that came into office decided that they wanted to go in a different direction. So they felt that an NSA was appointed, and he felt that it wasn't his role as an advisor to the president to be implementing programs. So most of the programs were actually dismantled or reduced, and he felt that the focus of the office should be more around policy.
Okay.
And so I was asked to step down.
And how did that change, or if at all, the work that you were able to do?
Well, I think now we can say it's almost 10 years. Neem is 10 years next year. So we left office almost 10 years ago. I honestly think that the country could have achieved a lot more than it's been able to in this past decade. In fact, what has happened is that we have so many more branches of Boko Haram and Islamic State West Africa Province, and we have new groups that have emerged in Nigeria, but across the Sahel. And unfortunately, now they're going into the coastal states.
Right.
So the problem has become bigger, more intractable. And I think it's become a problem that cannot be contained within one country. So I'm not saying that if we had stayed, we would have found all the answers and the solutions. Absolutely not. But at least there could have been a foundation that can be built on how to address an insurgency in government, but also using all the levers of power. It's one of the first programs that brought together government at the federal level, government at the state level, government at the local government level, and civil society.
Right.
Because we also had a network of civil society that we worked together with.
It was the ideal network, really, because you were working on every single
Absolutely.
fraction of power or of resource.
Absolutely. And I think what we wanted to really communicate to Nigerians that insurgencies require the whole society.
Yeah.
You have to really look at your education system. You have to look at how you socialize your young people. You have to look at pathways to self-actualization for people. You have to look at whether your education systems are fit for purpose. You have to look at communities. What is going on at the community level? Social cohesion. You have to look at, in our case, religious instructions.
Right.
We had a lot of rogue Islamic, because it was predominantly an Islamic insurgency, preachers that really distorted the message of Islam. I always felt that the Boko Haram insurgency was actually an opportunity to remake our society, because it came with so many other things that we could do. We could look at other vices like drug abuse, like all the different urban crime, all the different things, and bring young people into a place where they believed in a nation.
Absolutely.
And wanted to pull together in this idea of reclaiming a national identity. So in a way, I felt a little bit sad that the program became smaller, but it gave me the opportunity to start Neem.
Yeah, exactly. So talking about Neem, so your headquarters are based in Abuja, is that
Yes.
correct? But you do outreach work to sort of areas within Northeast Nigeria, or how do people access your services?
Okay. Yes, when we started mainly in one state, in Northeast Nigeria, Borno State.
Mhm.
In the 9 years that Neem has been in operation, we have worked in almost all the northern states. We've also worked in several southern states in Nigeria. We worked in Niger, Benin, Cameroon, Chad.
And those were also areas affected by Boko Haram, isn't it? Because it's not just sort of...
It's the same insurgency.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the same insurgency now is threatening, as I said, the coastal states, where they hadn't seen this kind of terrorist activity in the past.
Yeah. So so they'll be learning from you essentially on what to do, because you've kind of been there for the last 10 years, trying to do your best to deal with the issue on the ground. So in terms of the service that you offer, I saw something called Counselling on Wheels, which sounded like a lovely initiative. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. I had an idea that we could take mental health services to the hardest to reach citizens affected by insurgencies. So when we started working in Borno State, there was really an influx of development groups, mostly the UN agencies, but groups from all over the world who had converged mostly in Maiduguri, which was the capital. And I felt that there was quite a lot of services within the capital, especially in the center of the capital. But in remote areas, people were not getting any services. And so I had this idea. In Nigeria, we have this tricycles and stuff. We call them kikis. And another interesting thing is that when we started Neem, we had absolutely no money. So we had an idea and a dream. I knew that I wanted to do something. Multiple conversations with my sister. Also, she was also convinced that we could continue the work that we were doing in the NSA. And the core team that we worked with, young boys, all in their early 20s, also believed that we could do something. So we just had our idea and our dream and the determination to make something happen. So we didn't even have any money for a kiki. And so I approached Aisha Oyebode. She heads a foundation called the Murtala Muhammad Foundation.
Okay.
At the time, I knew her, but not very well. She's since become a really dear, cherished friend. And I said to her, I really want to do this. And she, without hesitation, gave us the money to buy 2 tricycles, literally. And so we now put all our resources together. We pooled our resources and we hired 2 psychologists. And luckily for us, they were willing to relocate to Borno State. And that's how we started. When we started the Counselling on Wheels program, eventually we got funding and we were able to hire 2 more, and then we built a team. But those 4 psychologists were the only psychologists in Borno State outside of the Federal Medical Center, which is a federal government hospital. And at that time, mental health was not the focus at all.
Right.
But I was determined that we could make a big splash and we could get people to understand how vital mental health was. So there weren't many people who had the experience of mental health. But I also believe that you could teach people to provide good quality mental health. They just had to have a few qualities, the right character, empathy, ability to learn, a certain level of education. And I felt that we could teach them how to become really good, effective lay counselors. So we set up a program where we hired, I think it was 25 people in the end. And we taught them all the things that we wanted to teach them about lay counseling. But we also insisted that split the program. So some of the time they're in the field and some of the time they're in the classroom. And we also had weekly supervision from the psychologist. And for me, because I started my career as a research psychologist, so data is always very important to me. I mean, at Neem, all the programs that we do, we try to make them evidence-based. So it was important that we collect pre and post data, which we did for the Counseling on Wheels. So we had baseline data, and then we tried this treatment module where we arranged them in groups, and we provided lay counseling, and then we did post test. And then what we decided was that when you're dealing with mental health and conflict, it's very difficult because when is an endpoint?
Right.
Because if, first of all, sometimes you're dealing with mental health issues or psychological issues that are pre the conflict.
Yes. Yeah.
And then they're compounded by the conflict. Sometimes they're caused completely by the conflict, but the conflict is still going on.
Exactly. I always wonder this because when you give someone a diagnosis of PTSD,
right,
in the middle of a conflict,
exactly.
when do you call it post?
When do you call it? Exactly. So it wasn't really easy. So that's something that we had to really grapple with. And also, I think when you're working in an NGO, you're dependent on funding.
Yep.
Most of the funding is short-term funding. So sometimes you get funding for 12 months, sometimes 24 months if you're lucky. It's rarely ever 3 years.
Yeah.
So we had to really take that into consideration in terms of how we designed the program. We came up with a model of really support groups.
Right.
So after the intervention, we formed support groups. So people who were showed leadership qualities, who showed capability of learning, who showed interest, they were given extra support to continue to lead the counseling groups.
I see.
And then we continued to provide supervision.
So that made it sustainable.
Yeah, and check-ins. So now we don't have a big Counseling on Wheels footprint in Borno State because we do so many other things, and we do mental health in many, many states. But we're still able to check in because we have our mental health professionals in different states.
Right.
So they can still follow up and check in. But I think it's an area that we must give more thought to in terms of how you do mental health interventions in conflict zones. I know people would argue that it's no different in with other humanitarian needs, because if a person is in need of food or shelter, those also have to be long-term. But what I'd like to see is the prioritization and inclusion and mainstreaming of mental health services within all humanitarian initiatives.
Absolutely, because I think that ends up a creation of a hierarchy almost, where you say, saving limbs, for example, is more important than the mental health of a person going through a conflict. But I think your example is a great example of actually it needs to happen side by side.
Side by side. I make the argument, it's not the same people doing the same things.
Yeah.
I mean, you can bring your aid workers to feed people while I provide them with psychological support, because I'm not the one providing them food. So we can actually do it together.
Absolutely.
It's not an either or.
Yeah.
But I think it's changing. I think people are talking a lot more about mental health and conflict. And one of the things that I'm really pleased about is I see so many young people studying psychology.
I think especially for sort of my generation of healthcare professionals coming through, because I think you did all the hard work for us and we're able to build on it, which is nice. Sort of comparing it to Nigeria, I wondered if you could tell me what your observations has been like in terms of community-based initiatives in the UK versus Nigeria, because from my past experience of growing up in India, one thing that I noticed was community was everything in India.
Absolutely. It's no different from Nigeria. I think we share a lot of similarities, not least the neem tree.
Yes, yeah. I grew up with a neem tree outside my house. So
yeah. I think a community is central to the life of most Africans, and Nigeria is no exception. What we tried and attempted to do with the Council on Wheels actually was a community-based mental health model. You take I got the idea partly from the home treatment service here.
Interesting.
Which you're very familiar with. Yeah. The only thing is I didn't have psychiatrists. I didn't have a multidisciplinary team. But I did have a team of psychologists that worked exclusively in the communities. And we also wanted to have quite a large education piece because most people, especially when you don't live in the big towns or you live on the fringes of society, often don't have information about mental illness and don't even know how to recognize the symptoms. So a lot of times people present with somatic symptoms and they get overly treated, and then they don't get better, and their mental health remains untreated, and then also there's a lot of stigma. So we did a lot of psychoeducation in communities, which is actually some of the work that we don't talk about much, but probably the work that I'm equally proud of. Yeah. Where you begin to teach communities about different kinds of symptoms, and they begin to connect that this is it's connected to how I feel, what I experienced, what I saw, or what I did, or what was done to me, and things like that. So we now allowed them to have a mental health vocabulary.
Yeah, so they were able to name.
They were able to name what they were experiencing, and also to understand that this is normal. You know, if you have malaria, it's very understood, and you get a lot of sympathy. But if you are talking to yourself, people sort of stigmatize you. Yeah. So we tried to normalize the symptoms and the presentation of mental illness. And I think, like when we go into communities, you see huge lines waiting for counselling on wheels. I mean, they're not waiting for food. We're not giving them food. We're not giving them shelter. We're not giving them anything but ability to be able to be relieved of the burden that they're carrying, whether it's anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, or any other kind of mental illness. And so I think some of the work that Neem has done in normalizing mental health, in prioritizing mental health, and getting people to understand that in most instances, this is very treatable.
Yes, yeah.
I think is some of the work that I'm proudest of at Neem.
Absolutely. And I think the other important point that I think you touched on was what's normal, because I think something that we don't realize as clinicians that haven't worked in conflict regions is it's very hard to understand what's happening when there is mass violence, when there is a lot of atrocities happening on such a big scale. Because, for example, I was reading an Al Jazeera article on the way here in 2021, which talked about around 300,000 children who had lost their lives because of the violence related to Boko Haram over the period of the insurgency, which you can't fathom. You can't fathom that number. Yeah. And that's me completely removed as a person from that society, trying to understand it. So I can only imagine trying to understand that, why you're part of that conflict or why you're being personally affected by. And you see, because at the moment with the war in Palestine, you can see that happening there as well, where it's all of this media coverage on the loss of all these lives. But how do we help people make sense of that?
Absolutely. And how do they rebuild? People forget that when the cameras are turned off, that the survivors still have that burden. Yeah. And so I think that's also one of the things that it's so important for us to make people understand that, yes, it's gone away from your screens, but it hasn't gone away. I was trying to understand really what are the long-term effects of conflict-related trauma. And I watched a lot of videos of women from Congo, from Uganda, the women who'd been kidnapped by the Lord's Resistance.
Right.
I mean, we're talking 50 years. And when you talk about their healing journey, they're still going through it today. Half a century after that conflict ended. So this is, I think, something that society needs to be prepared for. And because of this, one of the biggest pieces of work that we do at Neem is to train lay counselors.
Right.
We do a lot of training in multiple communities of lay counselors. We don't have funding for this work. It's the commitment that we put upon ourselves to do. Because my dream is that in every community, one day, there should be a team of lay counselors that will be grounded within the community. They are of the community, and they can continue to provide support for years to come after everyone has forgotten about this conflict. These people's lives matter, whether we see it or not.
Definitely. And I think the whole concept of, as we were talking before about medicalizing a lot of mental health issues, is that I think sometimes people feel that they need to be at a certain threshold to reach out for help.
Right.
But actually having lay counselors within your community embedded in it is, I think, a lovely way for someone to just turn to the neighbor to be able to say, I'm feeling this way.
Absolutely.
Or I'm remembering this awful memory.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about it. Let's see what help there is.
Absolutely. And it's cheaper. It's cheaper for the country.
Yeah.
It's cheaper for society if you can get access to good quality counseling within your community without having to travel miles.
Yeah. Now, one thing I was curious about is, how safe do you feel when you're doing this kind of work in conflict regions?
Honestly, it's not something that I personally think about a lot. And I'll tell you why. Because I think all my life I've been in places that people have felt would be deemed unsafe. I started my whole journey and ended up deciding to be a psychologist because I was interested in street homelessness.
Right.
And spent a lot of time with the homeless in all sorts of unsafe places, in Oxford, Reading, and London, and late at night, sometimes at 2 a.m, where they hang out, and it's not the ones on Oxford Street and stuff where it's fairly safe. But prior to that, when I did my degree in Los Angeles and was a volunteer at the juvenile hall, where I used to go on the weekends to talk to young prisoners. And I also worked in St. Elizabeth's in the summer. This is, I think it was one of the largest psychiatric hospitals in Washington, D.C. And at the time, it had some of the so-called most dangerous mentally ill patients. And then I transitioned. When I left England, I moved to the U.S. In the U.S., the pathways for training is so different.
Right, yes. Yep.
Because I was trained in clinical and forensics, so I didn't have to go and do another PhD or find another space or placement for to be trained. So my job trained me, and so I ended up working in a setting that was very unique at the time. So it was a forensics setting. It had, but it had people who had a developmental delay, who'd committed serious crimes. Hence, so it was a lockdown unit, like a jail kind of setting. But they also had mental illness, and some had multiple other diagnoses. It was a very, very specialized, high-stress working environment. So I've been curious about spending time in places where beggars in my hometown resided, because I've always been curious at the people that are always there. You think you see them, but you don't.
Kind of the forgotten.
The forgotten, yes. So I don't think about danger in that time. I'm driven by my curiosity. But one of the things that when I look back on now, I would have done differently. I took some of the really young staff, like 22 and stuff, to places that if I had thought about it, I wouldn't have put them through that. I took them to like maximum security where they were holding Boko Haram in underground cells without light and horrendous conditions. I took them to towns that had been bombed out by Boko Haram where there was nothing left standing. I never really thought about the imp because it's not something that I was worried about for myself.
Right. Yeah.
So sometimes I think it's not that I would say that I'm not a thoughtful person, but sometimes I think I put my staff in places that maybe if I think about it a bit more, I might not have asked them. And nobody's ever said no. Nobody's ever complained. But yeah, upon reflection.
I think it's a vice in our profession, isn't it? You kind of forget to forget sometimes to look after after yourself because you're like you said, you're just curious and you want to see what you can do to change a situation. But I'm sure your family probably worried a lot more about
when I was younger. But I mean, I think it's just they know that that's me, and I think and also because they think I'm very stubborn, so it'd be hard to dissuade me not to do something that I want to do or not to go to a place that I want to go to.
So what are the next steps for Neem and for mental health in Nigeria in general? What do you think the future holds?
Right now, we are doing a very exciting initiative that we're part of and so proud with King's College London. It's to train a generation of health workers, including in mental health, across the continent. So Neem is working on the mental health piece of this effort. And I think that this program really will be transformative for Africa, for the whole continent. We continue to train lay counselors within Nigeria. We have done the counseling on wheels in multiple states, and we have successfully integrated mental health and peace building. So all our peace building work now, without exception, has a mental health aspect of it. And we've been able to convince almost every donor that had wanted to fund our peace building work to fund an integration of mental health. So what we would like is to make this more mainstream. We did launch our Council on Wheels, Mental Health and Peace Building at the United Nations. And I know UNDP certainly has been talking about the integration of mental health with peace building. So I would like to see a world where in conflict, mental health is prioritized as part of the response. But I'd also like to see priority given to mental health in areas that do not have conflict. I think now, because so many people are speaking about mental health, a lot of celebrities have been very brave and come out and talk about their own experience. Young people are very open about their own mental health journeys and talking about mental health. It's actually becoming mainstream, but I think we should also be a bit careful that we don't start to co-opt this mental health language into our everyday experiences and not use it as there are certain things that are part of life. I don't want us to medicalize it.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
think that we have to treat it and it's some kind of mental health issue. So we have to be careful. But on the whole, it's an exciting time to be a mental health practitioner, honestly, because I started this journey so long ago, where at the time that even in the UK, we were never talking about mental health in schools in the way that it's been talked about today. And I think mental health has come a long, long way. Even when you see the amount of people that want to study some aspect of this field, it's actually amazing.
And I think one thing that we're trying to get better at, in the UK at least. I think we're trying to learn more from our migrant populations, from people that move here from other countries, and especially culturally.
Yes.
I think we have a lot to learn from the world in general about mental health practices. So I wondered if you had any tips for us in the UK that we could learn from Nigeria, because I'm sure there is.
Well, I think sometimes people think that countries are also homogeneous.
Yes.
in terms of our own ethnicities and our own religions and cultures. And Nigeria is a country with so many different cultures. So we are also mindful when we provide services that even within a region, cultures can differ.
Absolutely.
And I think what we try to do is to actually lead with empathy in terms of really trying to listen to people, listen to what they're saying. You have to have humility in this field to understand. When I was working here, we used to have a lot of two things that really struck me. A lot of Asian women would come and they would complain about stomach aches and stuff, that they would be subjected to so many tests and things like that. And there was not an understanding, a lot of these Asian women, because of culture, because of stigma, and sometimes because they don't have the language to express that this is an emotional thing and stuff. And also maybe because of the lack of acceptance in the community. So it's easier and more understandable for me to tell my father, my husband, whatever, I have a stomach ache, I need to go to the doctor, than to say that I'm in such emotional distress.
Exactly.
I need to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist. So I think we have that as well in Nigeria. And the other thing is, I saw a lot of Black men being diagnosed with schizophrenia in particular. And when you go on the ward and you start to talk to them, honestly, some of them are just, for example, incidences that they have maybe in a shop driven by frustration. You know, tall Black man, maybe they're treated badly in a shop and they get frustrated and they start to raise their voice. The shopkeeper is scared of them.
Yeah.
Before you know it, the whole thing escalates and they are
stereotyped.
They're stereotyped and they become, as far as the state is concerned, schizophrenic and stuff. So I think, whereas we don't have that because we're all at least the same color in Nigeria. But
point taken, yes.
But in terms of differences, it's something that we always negotiate. And I think there's something that I don't know even if it's something that you think about. It's certainly something that I think about. I'm very conscious of the fact that my training is completely Western.
Yes, absolutely.
So when I'm thinking in terms of my training and the science behind it, the model is so Western. It's what I've been told, what I've been taught, and how I've understood pathology from that Western lens. So it's always like a balancing act and negotiation, because I'm kind of caught in between the two.
Definitely.
Whereas I really understand my culture, but then I'm also a slave to my training. So you always...
That's such a good way to put it, because I absolutely agree. I think that's something that we will constantly be struggling with, but it's important to be mindful of it, I think.
Absolutely.
In the first place.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I think that was a really good point that you made about how we treat a lot of the ethnic minorities as a homogenous population. We see one Nigerian person, we assume they represent the whole of Nigeria.
Exactly.
So I think we still have a long way to go when it comes to that here. And one of the last questions I was curious about was, I know there's a lot of Western influence in terms of funding when it comes to aid in the Global South, when it comes to initiatives. And I think the Sub-Saharan initiative that was set up was partly US-backed as well in Nigeria.
Yeah.
What's the sentiment around that? Is that something that is welcomed? Is there a sense of mistrust when it comes to those institutions? What's sort of been your experience of it?
Okay. If I talk about it through the prism of Neem, I think for us, because it's been difficult to get funding from within, to be quite honest. I don't get any funding from the Nigerian government for the work that we do at Neem. So we do rely a lot on Western funders. And there's always the pull between what they want you to do and what you think you need to do. So it's a constant dance and a constant negotiation. And I always tell my team, look, remember the reason that we set up Neem in the first place. We set up Neem to do A, B, C. We don't have to take every bit of money coming our way. So I try to empower them that we can say no and leave that if it doesn't align with where we feel we can make a difference. And if it deviates so much from the core of what we do. And I think you also have this tension where sometimes you have a funder who has designed this program and they think it's amazing and the best thing since sliced bread. They've decided in London or Washington and stuff, and you're supposed to be implementing. So, and I think there's this idea that a lot of times we are just implementing partners. So we're not the ones who design. We don't come up with the ideas. But I think there's a lot of pushback from a lot of NGOs now and other civil society organizations within Nigeria and in Africa to say that, look, these are African problems. We need African solutions. If you really want to help and you want to give us the money, at the least we have to co-design. So we see changes. We see a lot of pushback. We see a lot of organizations that are saying no. We're in a good position, honestly, as Neem, because we can say no. But I do understand that not every organization can say no, because I always remember how we started. We started with nothing.
Now here you are. I mean, it's incredible. But yeah, so I think as someone, as a psychologist and a lawyer duo, who had, as you mentioned, a dream, an idea and a passion.
Absolutely.
And you've built this amazing foundation out of it. If someone wants to do the same thing in another conflict-driven area, or not even conflict-related, if someone had an idea, what would be your advice to them with your experience so far? How would you say to start?
I would say, first of all, don't doubt yourself. You already have the idea and the vision. And I think sometimes we overthink things. And I think sometimes we always think, and I keep telling myself, you don't have to have the money to do these things. You can start small. You can even start by changing people's mind. You can start by educating people. So yes, don't wait till you get a huge amount of funding. And I think that always you have to have a huge amount of humility to do this work. I think it is what will keep you going through the long, hard years. And it's hard. It's a slog. It's hard. And it's a difficult area. But I think if you're humble and you understand that results are incremental and that they could take years and that it's worth it. Because I think sometimes we live in a world where we want to see changes almost immediately. And these are not the kind of areas that you would go in if you want to see quick, immediate results. Results are long-term, they're incremental. But if you persist, that's what I'd say to them. Please persist. The rewards are so great.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. That's Fatima. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on our podcast today. And yeah, thank you for responding to my email. I think I was like, I'm going to email to Fatima, who I've never met, and see where we get. So it's been amazing to have you here. And hopefully we can have you back at some point in the future and catch up again.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for thinking of Neem. It's been a real pleasure, and it's such a great podcast. I really look forward to seeing where it goes. It's a topic that we don't talk about nearly enough. So thank you so much for bringing this to all our attention.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Culture Gap. Our guest episodes drop on the last Sunday of every month. If this conversation made you think differently about mental health, there's a lot more coming. Follow us on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and find us on social media to connect. One story at a time.